Welcome to Friday Fish Facts. I'm your host, Ron DeSantis. So, I've wanted to get Randy Reed on for a long time. He was one of my inspirations to start my Hangin with series. You had Randy Reed doing the Aquarist Podcast, and you had JH Aquatics doing Fish Fam News. And I kind of wanted to do a combination of the two, kind of do a live stream type thing. And ever since I've started watching the Aquarium Podcast, I wanted to meet Randy. And Randy, thank you for coming on today. How's it going, man?
For sure. It's going well, man. Thank you for having me on.
And thank you for everybody who's in the chat here. And as always, if you have any questions for Randy or I, feel free to speak up, throw those questions in, and we'll get to them. So, the Aquarius Podcast is the name of your YouTube channel and obviously your podcast as well. Episode 1 is with Eric Lucas. How did you get Eric on back in February 2018?
So that was just a matter of going to his website, buypetshrimp.com. So shout out to good buddy Eric Lucas. So go visit his site, check out his shrimp. When you go on his website, he's got one of those Shopify, whatever it is, where it pops up like the contact us or like the live messenger. And I'm like, hey, what better way to see if this guy, I can get a hold of him than live messaging him on his website. So I said, hey, are you interested in being on this brand new podcast that isn't even out yet? Would you like to be one of the guests? And I think he got back within like 5 minutes and was like, yeah, dude, I'll totally do it. So he was a guinea pig. That's how I got Eric Lucas on the podcast.
So after you did that first one, you're thinking, that was really fun. I want to keep going and, take it from there.
Well, I think I'd actually had 3 episodes pre-interviewed before I actually launched the show. So I think I had Eric Lucas. I think it's Chance from episode 2, blanking on his last name, and then Therese, that was at the time with Denale. So I think I actually had 3 interviews pre-recorded, and then I launched and was able to have kind of 3 weeks of buffer because I was doing a weekly release. So yeah.
So your first 4 episodes that you did on Aquarius Podcast are not on YouTube. You start on YouTube with episode 5, Brendan Flair.
Are they not?
I couldn't find them on there.
Really? Okay, so I thought that I had manually uploaded those when I created the YouTube channel because you'll notice that the icon is different. So I had initially thought that I was just going to keep it audio only and I wouldn't even do YouTube because I didn't really have an interest in doing video. And then I had enough people, I don't know, maybe like 7 episodes in that were like, hey, I would also love to listen to this while I'm at work on YouTube. And so I said, okay, created a YouTube channel and was able to sync Podbean to the YouTube channel. And so now when it pushes episodes across, they'll have like the little Podbean with the sound graph and whatnot. So that's what that is. And then the things where it's just the giant logo that looks terrible, those were my episodes that I had uploaded. But actually now I need to go back. Now you just gave me homework. Great. So I need to go back and try to get those earlier episodes on.
Not that the one and I just saw him come in here, Flint's Fish Forum. Not that one's not a great one to start with, but we're missing the other ones. We got to go to the podcast to listen to them.
Yeah, which I mean, you can listen to it on. Not that I want to have them available everywhere where they're currently available, but I think Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. So there's a good number of places just to listen to the audio only. But of course, people can look at YouTube as well.
Right on. So actually, Brendan, I hate to break this to you, Brendan, because we talked about maybe you're going to house sit for me while I'm on holidays this year. I don't think that's going to happen. So, excuse me, supposed to go down to the Oregon coast and kind of hit like Sunnyside, Cannon Beach, and then Portland at the end and check out the wet spot and all that. That was the plan for this end of June, but that's not looking too promising anymore. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brendan. I will definitely keep you in mind for next time. So, episode 75, you had Bentley Pascal. You just had Paul Sherman on, actually, which it took you a little while to get him on there. I think you said like a year and a half.
Yeah, and that was purely my fault, too, not Paul's fault. That was just me not following through and being a terrible podcast host.
So how many episodes do you think you're going to go up to? You're at 76? Like, keep going? Is there like a goal? Like, I really want to hit 100 or?
I think I had probably told this to Zenzo in one of the episodes, but I thought that initially I wanted to do 50. 50 was going to be my mark. And then I had plans to do like a live stream. So if anybody, I was going to do like a YouTube 50th episode live stream, but I never did that. I might live stream on my channel one of these days, but
Yeah.
at this time, I just want to focus on making the episodes. So I think I've got a couple already recorded. I think I've got a couple more lined up. But at this point, I would say 100. So I think for sure I want to do 100. And then if it continues to be fun, if it continues to be relatively easy to get guests, because sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge. Yeah, so I think 100 right now. But if it becomes something where it just becomes like clockwork, and I'm able to easily line up guests, and it stays interesting, and I'm enjoying it, I'm learning, and people continue to enjoy it. Like when I took the few month hiatus from recording and releasing episodes, I was really surprised that the sheer number of people that would reach out to me on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook and say that they missed the podcast, and then they were actually like generally concerned, like, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Family? And I'm like, no, everything's fine. Just got a baby, got a job. Corey barely lets me leave the office. No, no. I mean, it's just work-life balance, and then on top of that, a podcast, and trying to put out episodes and trying to be prepared and be a good steward of the person that I'm interviewing. So if I haven't done my due diligence to be prepared for the interview, I don't want somebody to look bad. Right? They're volunteering their time. They're talking with me as a stranger, and I want to represent them in the best possible light. I think I have done, I kind of failed at least one person, I think, in that respect. If I could go back and redo the episode, I would. But
was it an earlier one?
It was an earlier one, yeah.
You got to learn. You live and learn.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's not just me putting out content. I want to make sure I put out, I want to represent the person that I'm interviewing well.
What would you say is the biggest challenge doing the Aquarist Podcast?
So what would be the biggest challenge? I would say right now, just the scheduling.
Yeah.
So having, kind of a typical Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job, but I can do a lot of work from home. A lot of guests are on the East Coast. A lot of them are in the Midwest. So just kind of wherever the people are, trying to get international guests. So just lining up the time zone difference. And then still making sure that I'm being a good dad and a good husband, and I'm not skirting those responsibilities, because I do put in a good number of hours for work, and I'm kind of always on call 24/7 if anything happens with Aquarium Co-op. I'm incredibly vested in this company, so I need to make sure that I still support my wife and my kids, and I don't want to block out too many consecutive days in a row or have too many interviews in a week where I'm, sitting at a computer for an hour and a half having a conversation with somebody, and then another hour just to make sure the episode's dialed in and then publish it. So
is there, I know what you mean. I was doing like the weekly thing for about 6 months with, scheduling all the guests and working out times, and East Coast, which I'm on the West Coast, but more people are on the East Coast. And I feel your pain. I know what you mean. So who haven't you had on that you would really like to have on?
Who haven't I had on that I would really like to have on? I think in general, more international guests, and continuing to find people that the kind of YouTube internet knows nothing about, but have incredibly storied histories in the hobby, or are people that have they've been doing this for forever. So like Joe Ferdenzi, who I would say is a good friend of mine now that I've interviewed a couple times, and I'm sure I'll have him on again. He is somebody that I'm so thankful for, that I was able to interview 2 times and to give people just outside of his area or outside of the fish club scene that may have heard of him, give them an opportunity to hear what somebody who's purely in this for the hobby, wants nothing to do with notoriety. But, I want to celebrate those people, and I want people to know about them. And, I'm selfish and I want to learn stuff too. Yeah. Not a person in particular. So I would say the people that I don't know about, but have been in the hobbies for decades and decades and decades. And also, on the international side as well, to understand, what does the hobby look like in India? What does the hobby look like in, I don't know, Italy? Like, what does it look like in all of these places? And not from like the high end, like, you've got a very prominent social media page, you're a world-known aquascaper. Like, I want to know what somebody that has a fish room that just belongs to their local, Dusseldorf fish club, or like I want to know your experiences in the hobby and what things are like for you as an aquarist.
That's sometimes it's difficult to get some of those people on, especially if they don't have their own social media. They're not really comfortable being
Yeah.
in front of a camera and stuff like that. That's my favorite thing to do right now is like go to people's houses and film the fish room tour, which I had a few lined up, but then with everything going on right now, they're put on pause.
Yeah.
But I do love seeing other people's fish room. You learn so much every time you go there. I think other people want to see that too. That's why I like making videos on them. So let's go back to the beginning, Randy, because we kind
Okay.
of started with the Aquarist Podcast. How old were you when you got into the hobby, and what was your first fish?
So what was I like? I think, well, I know from the, what was it, the 1989 earthquake when during the World
San
Series,
Francisco?
when I lived in Northern California, we had a fish tank then because my memory of it
Giant A's.
was being on the couch. We were watching the World Series and seeing, this gaudy lamp or whatever it was that we had swinging from the ceiling. That thing was
wow.
moving, and it was kind of like next to the fish tank, and the fish tank was moving. So that's like my most vivid memory of an earliest memory of a fish tank.
Yeah.
So we've always had like a community Thunderdome. This American family has no idea what they're doing with fish husbandry, but we always kind of had a tank, and it was always a very exciting time to be able to go to the mall, go to the old school pet stores that we had in the mall where they sold dogs, they sold fish, they sold everything. And seeing the guy, I thought one of the coolest things ever was the specimen container. So the Lee specimen container, I thought them like having that with a net in their hand and they were going to net out fish for us. That was like such a cool memory from my childhood. So yeah, just kind of that community Thunderdome tank, that 55 gallon, I think got a crack in it when I was maybe 7 or 8. And then we didn't have any fish since then. And then I got into the hobby. Let's see here. I got back in or in for the first time on my own. It was like 2004 maybe, and it was probably just because I lived next to a PetSmart, and we'd always go into PetSmart just to kill time. And it's like, oh, that Oscar looks cool. Yeah, that 10-gallon tank right there. Let's do this. And then then you learn. And then you find out. Then you find like Monster Fish Keepers and all the early forums, and you do all of your, you create all your forum names and whatnot. And so that's where you try to get all your information. So then I was in the hobby for about a year or two at that point, moved up to Sacramento, got a couple 100-gallon tanks in my master bedroom and tanks in the kitchen and all that stuff. But it was never to the point where it is now, where I had a dedicated fish room and had really a focus. And then we moved to Southern California and downsized considerably so my wife could go to a nursing school, a nursing program. And then I basically left the hobby for, I don't know, like a decade and came up to here being Washington, so the greater Seattle area. And again, just kind of killing time. My wife and I going into a local pet store, seeing these small planted tanks that I don't recall ever seeing when in the early 2000s, and that really captivating me. And convincing my wife, like, yeah, let's get one of those tanks. And actually, that tank I recently reset up, and it's right here next to me in my office. And I posted.
Let's have a quick look at that little.
Right. I didn't know if that was breaking protocol.
No, there is no protocol. Yeah, look at that. And you're saying you got some cherry shrimp in there?
Yeah, cherry shrimp from home. That's the dwarf aquarium lily bulb that, again, we were testing out before we even decided to sell it. So that's the one that we sell. That's packed in peat moss. There's some co-op choya wood, co-op nano stone in there. Some saucer tank. So I just that was the tank that got me back into the hobby. And so once I got that tank, it was just a bug, because I think from there I started looking at YouTube videos and no doubt found like King of DIY and Aquarium Co-op, and then not even knowing that Co-op was just down the road for me.
So how did you end up meeting Corey?
Corey was fortunate enough. He was fortunate enough to be in the group that I got into the Amazon Spheres to take a tour. So Gary Lang came up to speak at Greater Seattle Aquarium Society, and kind of what we do with guests.
So you already in the group? That's how you met? You already in the club?
So yeah, I was in the club. I was in GSAS, and of course I was a customer of Aquarium Co-op, and I'm kind of quasi on the board of GSAS, and we had Gary Lane coming up, and people were like, oh, our usual board member that is an Amazon employee as well wasn't going to be available to be the tour guide to take Gary Lang to go look at the spheres. And so I'm like, well, I'm an Amazon employee, like, let's go ahead and do this. So it was a group of GSAS people, and then Corey and Jimmy also came along to do their filming, and that video is available on the Aquarium Co-op YouTube channel. And so that was where I actually got to meet in person Jimmy and Corey. Really cool time. And So,
That's awesome.
and then from there, it's like, hey, Corey, any chance you want to be on do an interview? And he's like, yeah, sure. And we ended up filming it at his house, which was pretty cool. So let a relative stranger into his home. But I think he figured out that,
That's cool.
I had a decent enough job, so I probably wasn't overly crazy and,
Yeah.
had a family, but yeah.
So list the top 5 things you hate most about Corey. I'm just kidding.
We'd be here.
The list
We'd
goes
be
on,
here
right?
all
So how did you get on with working for Aquarium Co-op?
So
Which if people don't know that you do work for Aquarium Co-op.
I do.
And what do you do for Aquarium Co-op?
So I'm the director of operations for Aquarium Co-op, and basically what that means is it is my job to ensure that our day-to-day operations are running at optimal levels. And so basically what that all distills down to is that we get your orders out on time, accurately, with as much care and attention to detail as we would want our own packages. So that's kind of a very high level view of what I do. But my title encompasses a ton of other things. I manage, I'm quasi HR, Corey talking about us actually having health benefits and all that. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of the
cool.
the health plan administrator. So never thought I would be in an HR capacity, but I kind of am our HR person. I handle purchasing, vendor management, the vendor relationship, new product sourcing. So Corey and I work very closely on what new products we're going to bring in. Product testing, obviously, in the fish room. People have probably seen my my fish room tour of the various products that we're testing, and not just like dry goods and foods, but also plants as well. So,
what kind of foods, Randy? Maybe you could show
Oh, what
me.
kind of food? Oh, Ron, geez.
Just off the top of my head.
Let's take a little break,
Yeah.
folks. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this brand, but Extreme Krill Flakes, probably the #1 fish food out there. All joking aside, this is the staple in my fish room. Pretty much every single tank gets it, and this is the first prepared food and kind of the only prepared food that the wild Peruvian discus will eat. So this is a discus saver right here. I love this food, and I love the people that run Extreme. I have a fantastic relationship with them, and the two companies, Aquarium Co-op and Extreme Foods, we work very closely together. We have been able to really help influence them in a very positive way, and I think you're just going to hear nothing but good things out of Extreme for a number of years to come. So,
by the way, this video is not sponsored by anyone in any means. Just also, let's say I was having trouble with my plants. Is there a fertilizer you can recommend?
Oh, I thought we were going to space these out. I mean, if we were going to, I would use Easy Green, but we'll talk about this one later.
Okay, sounds good.
I legitimately do have products on my desk though. Like that is an active thing, whether it's label dimensions, product packaging size. So like, I've had products on my desk, like let's say Easy Green and Easy Iron, because I constantly need to take measurements. I need to make sure that as we launched on Amazon Canada, so you can now get Easy Green and now
That's
Easy
correct,
Iron.
which I'm in Canada, yeah, on Amazon.ca, yeah.
Yeah, so Amazon.ca, making sure that, again, that attention to detail, like measuring, making sure I get the right boxes, like the actual shipping boxes for the individual products, so that we know it's going to go into the Amazon fulfillment network. I used to be a program manager for Amazon. I know what those fulfillment centers can do to product, making sure it's as robust as possible. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility for me to have a ton of products on my desk at any given time.
I've actually never used the iron before, but good product.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you've got a crypt tank or anything that's going to want, that's got the reds and needs that iron content, like 100%. And that's why it's the second product to launch. And we'll work on a couple other things. We want to stagger it out. We're still learning kind of the ins and outs of what it is to sell on Amazon. And again, trying to have the best customer experience possible when the actual fulfillment of the product has been taken out of our hands. So that's something that we didn't make that decision lightly. We tried to do as much research as we possibly could, because we don't want to just send product up to Canada and all of our Canadian fans have a terrible experience ordering from Amazon or receiving their product in a condition that we would find unacceptable.
Which Amazon, is top notch. I think you picked a good one there. Now, before we get into talking about your Peru trips and such, let's see here. Let's go over to the show off your channel here for a second here as I go into.
I don't know if this is going to be good or not.
Oh, of course it's good. Okay, I wanted to show. So here's the Aquarist Podcast channel with host Randy Reed, and I want to go to sort by. Most popular. We're going to talk about some of these videos here as this thing loads. Some of your trips, some of your videos here with Peru. So there we go right here. We're going to talk about some of these videos here next. So let's pop on back over. How many times have you been to Peru?
Just the one time, but I definitely want to go back, and I have definitely got the bug for wild fish collecting. I've had the chance to with Ryan from Wild Fish Tanks and Corey to collect in Florida, but any fish collecting that I can do, and then as much international fish collecting that I can do as well.
Your video, one of your videos there, it's about the discus farm that has over 200,000 views right now. I was very impressed with your editing skills.
Thank you.
I'm serious. What do you use for editing?
What is this? iMovie, like whatever the built-in thing is on the Mac that I have, which there's definitely some limitations there. I think I have, what is it, Premiere? Is that the other one that people use for editing?
I think so, yeah.
I
don't use that one. But...
I want to say I have it. I think I opened it up and it looked a little bit more complicated. Not that I couldn't learn it, but just again, that kind of work-life balance, time management.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something that I want to take on at this time, but yeah, just iMovie.
What about doing more edited videos? Like I was really impressed with your edit. As I go through every time I have a guest on, I mean, obviously I'm a fan of them before, but I want to get even more familiar with them and going through their videos. I was very impressed with your edited videos and really found myself watching them start to finish.
Awesome.
Next one, start to finish. Next one, start to finish.
My whole philosophy with that is just make a video that you would want to watch. I'm incredibly hard on myself when it comes to if I'm going to produce something. Again, it's just like with the podcast interviews. Yeah. I want to produce a podcast that I would want to listen to. So that's why my podcast is a very specific style, because those are the podcasts that I like the best. There's the podcast that got me that I've been listening to forever. It's called Econ Talk with host Russ Roberts. Yeah. And it is an interview-based podcast. He stays out of the guest's way as much as possible and only asks kind of probing, leading questions. That's what I really, really like. And so that's what I try to produce for my interviews. And the same thing with the videos. I try to minimize the things that I don't care for in terms of, YouTube production styles or whatever it is, and just, produce something that I would want to watch and, understand that people, myself included, have a very short attention span. And, you gotta tell it to them fast, show them something that they're going to be interested in. And, never compromise and try to show this hobby in a disparaging or clickbaity way in terms of taking advantage of fish. So I'm, fairly critical of those that do that. And so I will never try to do that myself.
Cool. Let's hop over to the chat for a second here. And King Lee's got a question. King Lee from Twin Cities Guppies. He says, hey, Randy, where in Peru do you guys sleep on the boats, or do you go collecting? Where do you guys sleep? On the boats you go collecting on, or do you guys come back to the hotel every night?
Yeah, so the boat, the MF Esperanza? That was the kind of traditional Amazon River boat. Yeah. It was a double-decker with a top little hangout canopy area. So there are there's probably there's probably maybe 15 rooms on it altogether on both levels. It's set up to for double occupancy. Most of them are set up for double occupancy. Some of them are set up for single occupancy, but you basically have this little 40 square foot room. That's probably a terrible measurement, but it's enough to kind of comfortably sleep two people, at least the room that I was in. Luckily, the way that MT Amazon schedules their trips is they try to book it so that it's single occupancy in these rooms, so you have kind of the best experience possible. You don't want to be crammed in with too many strangers on this boat. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you've got your boat. They've got mosquito nets. I definitely did still get bit by stuff because you're in the jungle and there's a lot of things that want to bite a human. So yeah, you've got the room to sleep in. And I think given what it is, it was a fantastic boat. And, I didn't feel like it was anything less than what I would expect. And I was very happy. And I am very much looking forward to my next time on that boat with that crew and with, Devin and Michael Barber. It's just a wonderful experience all around.
When are you going to go again?
Whenever my wife lets me.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So it'll probably a couple years. Or if we can line up and have well, obviously COVID-19, like Peru
Yeah, yeah.
borders are shut down. Like once this is all over with, which it will be, hopefully within no more than 2 years out.
Discus. The wild caught discus that you catch from Peru versus discus that you can buy here. How does the price differ?
Ooh, you mean like in terms of what I paid to
Yeah,
get
because
those?
what? So can maybe you can explain like when you're catching fish in Peru, whether it's discus or cories or plecos or whatever it is, there's got to be a cost that is associated with that to ship them back to your place. Can you give us kind of like a ballpark of what's that like versus buying something out of
I,
your
I mean,
local
so
liquor
so
store?
I think I'm going to equate it this way. It's like if you talk to somebody that likes to fish, if you talk to a local Pacific Northwesterner that goes out and he catches Dungeness crab and he likes to catch coho salmon out in the Sound, or somebody that lives out of Southern California and they like to go and get tuna. It's never going to be. You're never taking the price of the trip and comparing it to like the meat you're going to bring back, because that equation will never balance out in your favor.
Mm-hmm.
It's you are going to and I believe if I took the cost of the trip, the time away from work, everything that was involved,
Yeah.
and compare that to if I had just bought from somebody that imports wild discus and paid like that 250, $300 up front per discus. Sure, we bought them for 30 soles per discus, which is like $5 US, whatever it is, which is still a really good amount for them. Down there in Peru, like we weren't ripping them off by any means. We basically
Yeah.
told them to set your price, we'll pay it.
Yeah.
But once you factor in that we had to pay the importing of it, paying the wholesaler to
Was that
process
pricey,
it.
the importing?
Oh yeah, it definitely gets up there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it ends up being like $400 a box of fish, something of that nature, maybe up to six. And then you're rolling the dice on the survivability, so you don't even know, you've got no guarantee. There's no
Yeah.
two-way policy, and then just the inherent cost of the trip of going down there. So
Right.
the fact that I have this inherent cost, like this intrinsic cost of or value, rather, an intrinsic value to these discus that I brought them back from Peru is worth more than if I were to just buy them outright. It makes them a more
Oh, for sure.
valuable fish.
For sure. Uh, what does pleco taste like?
What does Flecko taste like? I think it's just like a white flesh fish. It was actually really good. I was bummed we only had it for one breakfast.
So Randy went down to like a kind of a pleco buffet, which had like 10,000 plecos
That thing was a
uh,
trip. That thing was
in
an
their
absolute
net, and then
trip.
you kind of pull your pleco and choose and eat
Yeah.
pleco soup and all that stuff.
Well, yeah. So we're on the Esperanza, right? I'll roll
Right.
my R's. We're on this
Hmm.
thing. We're going to our next collecting spot. We're all hanging out, and we pass by this barge, and I look over. I'm like, what in the name? Like, what is this thing? What is this pen float? Like this square thing floating with these, 4 or 5 hole torn multicolored blankets on the back. Like, what is this thing? And so I asked Devin. It was either Devin or Michael. I'm like, oh, that's just a pleco barge taking plecos down to Iquitos. Oh, that's it? You don't think you wanted to tell us? And I'm like, can we please go visit this? So,
Yeah.
my hat's off that I'm the one that got us to go and get the footage of that thing, because that was a trip. That thing
That
was an
was
absolute
that
trip.
was pretty cool. So what was the highlight of Peru?
Uh, what was the highlight of the Peru? Probably the whole thing. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, hanging out with Dean and Corey, getting to meet Michael Barber in person, getting to meet Devin. There's a chance that interview, one of the listeners of the podcast does audio engineering, so he might be able to salvage that audio. I might be able to release that one. But just the whole experience. I mean, Iquitos itself, meeting people like Neil Clark, all these other people on the boat, just the fish collecting, being in the Amazon. I can't even, yeah, the whole thing. Terrible answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's a good answer. Um, what's it like hanging out with Dean?
What's it like hanging out with Dean?
Yeah.
It's a trip. It's a trip in and of itself. Dean is an awesome guy. Dean is just a walking DIY. Brain's always turning. Like, that guy is just he's something else. Dean's awesome. Dean
What
is awesome.
about, I mean, you get to do a little bit of traveling with Graham Co-op. You got to go to Florida, and you met Ryan.
Yep.
His YouTube channel is Wild Fish Tanks. He used to be called the Lucky Schmuck, but he changed his name. What was it like to see his fish room in person?
It was cool, man. Any fish room, any person's tank. I love seeing, and just one more fish room to go into, seeing the different things that he's doing versus what I might be doing, seeing what he's working with. It was all awesome.
And you got to do some collecting with them as well,
We
right?
did, yeah, we did. And the whole time I was thinking about gators and pythons, but
Yeah, I know. I'd be worried too. I mean, I've never been to Florida, but there's got to be gators hiding
they're a
somewhere,
little bit
aren't there?
they're a little too comfortable, to be honest. And Corey fit right in with them, man. He's just like going into all the. You look at the Instagram channel, Nature's Metal, like that Instagram channel enough is like I probably shouldn't mess with any type of like crocodilian species, but yeah. And then apparently somebody was like, "Oh, you think alligators are bad? You should have been concerned about the water moccasins." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Those
Oh
are terrible."
yeah.
Yeah,
Were
or
you able to take anything from that trip and bring them home?
no. I mean, it would have been cool to get some of their self and mollies, but we didn't get many of them. And that was like on the tail end of, we went there for Global Pet Expo to do that convention. And it was like a last minute, we were going to go to a fish farm, but that fell through, or a fish breeder rather. And so we're
Yeah.
like, let's go to Walmart and buy some water shoes and some aquatic shorts. And let's go to some of the places, around here, Ryan. And so we did and had a great time.
Maybe Candy can throw out another link for us. This is totally off topic, but I just see Sim Racing 604 has just joined. If anyone's a big sim racing fan, this is the guy that pushed me to start doing YouTube. Maybe we could share his channel up there. Thanks, Candy. Let's talk about your fish room for a little bit, Randy. How many tanks you got going on? What size tanks you got going on?
I don't know. We can probably call it like 35 or 40. Primarily,
That's a good amount.
yeah, in like a 10 by 14 space, so it gets a little cramped. But yeah, I try to do as best I can with the limited space that I have in the fish room. Primarily 20s, 10s, 440s, a couple 30 breeders, maybe like 10 15s, which I'm really in love with that 15 gallon size. And then one of the more recent projects I'm doing is on one of the 77-inch Gladiator racks, which I think somebody had asked me, how do I like Gladiator racks? I think they're the best. And I think Gladiator needs to reach out to fish people and sponsor them and say, this is the official rack of the Fish Nerd is Gladiator, because those things are solid. So I went from having on one rack, one shelf level, basically 220s normally like next to each other, 220 highs, and then 210s on the end.
So you
and
see them from the side?
Exactly. So you see it like normal, right?
Yeah,
like the normal profile.
Yeah.
And then knowing kind of what I want to do with pairing off discus in the future, those 220s, flip those suckers and put them side by side. And now I can actually get 4 20s there instead of 2.
Oh, cool.
And I kind of knew I was going to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then, one of the bigger challenges is, all right, so I've got these 20s with holes drilled into the back, so the long part for an overflow. Do I throw these things away or do I try to repurpose them? And so I ended up repurposing them, $20 gallons, or the $1 a gallon sale. $20 isn't the worst, but when you're having to throw out and replace 8 tanks, my wife would definitely throw me out too. So,
So you've got quite an impressive breeding system going on there with your racks, your brine shrimp hatchery. Let's talk about what kind of fish you've got in there, what kind of fish you're breeding.
So the fish I have in there, so obviously we've talked about the wild discus. I think I have 3 different domestic discus that I'm also raising up. So I'm probably going to be a year or 2 out before I've got any discus production, but I've got checkerboard discus, blue diamond, red melon, turquoise tiger. So those are the domestic strains. The ones that are actually breeding right now, so the angelfish that people saw in the video, kind of that. I'm not an angelfish nerd, but it's like the Periaba black leopard tail, spotty, pretty black things with blue iridescence. So those guys, and then a pretty healthy breeding activity with super reds and albinos.
Yeah.
And let's see here.
Are you doing the L144 or just the straight albino?
L144.
Yep. That's the blue eye.
No,
blue eye yellow. Yeah.
Not the blue eye, just the straight albino. And I'm actually gonna cut that back. I'm growing out a much larger number of the super reds, so I'll really focus on those. And primarily being like for the co-op, that's basically where all my fish end up. We tend to have too big of a problem with the getting in the normal albino bristlenose, whereas the super reds are still like, I was kind of, if we weren't buying them from a wholesaler, I was kind of the main source of a good number of super reds going into that shop, and those tend to be in a little bit of a higher demand and a little bit more scarce for us to get. So I'm going to focus on breeding those. But given that I have the real estate, it's like, why not go ahead and let these albinos breed? We still will sell them at the co-op. It's just, they're not nearly as difficult for us to get.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought I had sold. I tried to sell all my albinos, but I ended up having like 6 little ones left over.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I do the calico. I mean, I just had, there's like a week. This little 5.5 gallons got like 37 week-old super reds in there, and then this one, the 29 behind me, I got 3 tanks filled with calicos.
Nice.
But there's definitely more money if you want to like help support your own hobby with the calicos, the L144s, the super reds versus your brown or albino ones.
Yeah, and I've got the group of the super red long fins as well that are breeding.
That's a good one to have too.
Yeah, but those guys, they're so skittish. I mean, I'm inherently not a huge fan of longfin varieties to begin with, and then you couple that with these tend to be more skittish than a pleco, than a normal bristlenose anyway, and it's like, I don't like you as much, but I'll still work with them. So those ones are breeding, and that was a bit of a surprise. I thought I still had a few more months to go before they were a breeding size. And then I just recently got in some killifish eggs, so I'm going to work with.
Oh, what kind of killifish?
I'm not saying.
Okay.
It's a secret, right? No, I want to be successful with them before I'm like, I'm going to have the, pink killy wonder or whatever it is. I don't know. That's not what I'm working on. I'm not working with the pink killy wonder. But so those are eggs, and I've actually got about another 6 weeks to go of incubation time. Okay. 5 or 6 weeks. And then we'll see how that goes. Maybe I film it, maybe I don't. I've never received eggs before, and I've also
no, I haven't.
Yeah, and I have received killies from Joe Fredenzi, so my buddy over in Long Island. That's a big time killifish guy, and he may actually send me some of the species as well in a juvenile form. So that would be super cool if he's able to do that. If not, no worries. And then there's a new Corridor species that I have as well that I'm going to work with. And these were both, I reached out to Corey and I was like, dude, what do you want me to breed for the store? Like, if you could pick 1, 2 fish, and he threw out a couple names, and then he was like, yeah, this one and this one, breed those, and we'll be good to go.
Is the type of Corridor a secret as well?
Yeah.
All right.
And people will eventually see, but.
Yeah, Corys are fun. I breed Corys as well, and some of them are not too difficult, and some of them are really difficult. So
I was actually looking last night at the apps for barometric pressure, because so many of the more difficult ones rely on, or people tend to find that when the barometric pressure changes, that with a cold water change will kick it off. And you just go to planetcatfish.com and you can get lost in the breeding reports and what people are doing to get Corys to spawn. And that it's all about, again, it's not for me personally, it's not about being able to make money from it. It's just wanting to have the experience, wanting to have fun, wanting to breed in mass, but then know that these fish are going to have a home to go to. And it's not like, well, what am I going to do with all these things? So
you mentioned you'll go to Peru next time, maybe when your wife says it's okay. What does your wife think about the fish room and the time you spend in there and the money you spend on it?
What money? What are you talking about? I've shown her all the receipts that show like fish are 50 cents and all that.
Yeah. Everything was free. What do you mean?
I mean, there's definitely.
I know that's
like we like.
My wife's sitting beside me right now saying, "I know that's not true."
I mean, everybody's going to have a vice. Everybody's going to have a hobby that they're into. I could be into muscle cars and have, a $60,000 car that doesn't run in my garage. I could have a hobby that I play, not knocking any of these things. I could be on a softball league. I could be so crazy into competitive, post high school softball that I spend every waking hour away from my family, where this is a hobby that I am at home. I'm kind of an introvert. I get to stay home. I am kind of a homebody. Perfect. No, I think, it was just, the biggest thing was giving her back one of our bedrooms, because I kind of turned that in. I kind of commandeered that as a fish room. And so when I told her, well, I could build a room out in the garage, and she's like, do it, just do that. Give me that room back. And so, so I gave her a guest room back, or the guest room back, I should say. But no, I mean, it's, she knows that now, especially working at the co-op, that it's such a, it helps me be a better employee. It helps me be a better director of operations, having a fish room. It's such a, it's a pretty vital part of, what I bring to the table as an employee of Aquarium Co-op. So I think she's okay with it. And it's honestly kind of like a party trick. When people, back before we were all in quarantine, she's like, oh, can you show this person the fish room? Can you show
Yeah.
them the fish room?
Yeah,
And
my wife's
people
like that too.
people are like, they have no idea what she's talking about, and they're just like, I don't know. And they go in there, and when you see tanks full of guppies, when you see tanks full of super reds, they're albinos, and you see
Yeah.
a 40 breeder just completely brimming with angelfish fry, like everybody's just like, wow. I mean, it may be a wow, like you're insane, but it's a wow.
It might be, and they're like, wow, this is cool. I don't know what any of these fish are, but I think they're cool. So
she sees the way, she knows that my boys light up at it. My 11-month-old will stare at the betta tank in my son's room and watch the betta, watch the mystery snail, watch all the cherry shrimp in there. And he'll just stare at that thing for 20 minutes. He'll get down, go back, stare at it for another 20 minutes. And when you've got an 11-month-old, when you're not holding them, anytime you're not holding your kid is a good time.
Yeah.
So my youngest loves feeding the fish. He goes in there. He knows plecos. He knows that plecos get the rapashi, the frozen rapashi in the freezer. He knows that angelfish get the krill flake. Like he knows that sometimes they'll get the wafer for plecos well. And then he knows like the various tetras in our main 75-gallon display tank in the living room. So it's like a hard, like, how could you not want your kids to know about nature and animals and be excited when you see fish?
My son was about he was about 3 when he wanted to get some fish, and that's kind of how I got back into it. So
Yes.
for sure, and he's still super into it. So basically, you can have as many tanks as you want as long as you can keep them in the garage. Outside, she just doesn't want the fish room spilling into the house. And
Yeah. And there's only right now
fair.
there's only 2 tanks that are in the house right now.
Right.
And I've got my eye on maybe expanding the fish room in the garage a little bit, but that's
So do I.
that'll
can't
be
really mention anything right now, but
yeah, that'll be sometime in the future.
You are a pretty handy guy. I'll look at your video. The in-depth fish room rack install demonstrates some of your handyman skills. Where does this come from? You have kind of mentioned what you were.
No,
Yeah, I think you are, man.
No.
And you did mention what you were doing before you worked at Aquarium Co-op, kind of. So maybe explain a little bit about that. What you were doing before and
what I did before.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I'm not somebody that you pay to build. Oh, that was a big sneeze.
That was a big scene that came through. That's my. Yeah. She's fine. She's fine, everyone.
No, I am not really a handy person at all. I think I would just credit it to YouTube and people. There's good instructional videos out there on how to hook up plumbing with PEX or how to build a seesaw for your kids. And I've found that it's more so about the tools and the skills. So as long as you have the right tool for the job and you're not trying to make a tool that's designed for this activity and have it do something else that it's really not meant for. I think that's when people get into trouble. So as long as you have the tools, you can kind of build and do most things. And I struggle with measure twice, cut once. I'm kind of a measure once and cut twice. So that's one of my problems. But no, before that, I'm, I've kind of a supply chain professional as far as, I don't know, I throw out some fun terms like demand planning, material planning, all that kind of stuff, program management for Amazon on the supply chain side. So that's kind of been my career for the past 10-ish years in aerospace and then biotech and then more recently with Aquarium Co-op. So.
And your live streams are sponsored by Awaza.
They were, yeah. We had a long sponsorship with them. Awaza, the people I worked with there were awesome people. And more recently, yeah, we've switched to. I've stopped the sponsorship with them, and actually the episodes are now sponsored by Aquarium Co-op.
So how did you get that original sponsorship?
Actually, Corey was my first sponsor. Yeah, I did. I had like 8 episodes. I think were Aquarium Co-op sponsored before I was an employee.
And then you switched over.
Yeah, and then I did switch over. How did I get the sponsorship?
Yeah.
I think they had reached out. I think I was joking with Ricardo Camara from the Austin Aquarium Club about that, and I'm pretty sure it was him. Like, not, I'm, people, take it for what it is. I'm not somebody that's ever going to set up not a GoFundMe, but a Patreon. Yeah, like I'm not going to do that. So I think I had talked about that, and not, people want to do that by all means. If you want to dedicate more time and you need more financial resources to come in and support, and people want to support you, cool, set up your Patreon, whatever. Personally, I'm not going to do that. I don't want that extra level of commitment to people to produce additional stuff above and beyond.
I'm 100% with you. I feel the exact same way. I don't
So
have a Patreon or ever will, but I 100% support people that do for that reason.
now, if there were like 10,000 people that were like, "Hey, set it up, I'll give you $1 a month," maybe I would completely change my tune. But
Yeah.
but no, as it is now. And I was talking about that and just said, it'd be cool if there was a big company out there in aquatics that wanted to sponsor me. By all means, as long as your product isn't killing stuff. It's either that or I get sponsored by like Bob's Used Mattresses. I think actually that I use, and they were actually listening, and so one of their people reached out and was like, "Hey, we want to sponsor you, or let's talk about sponsorship." And so that's how that happened, and so got a bunch of their product and used it in my fish room, and they helped pay for a good portion of the trip down to Peru, and so that was really what helped sell my wife on it. That actually somebody wants to actually send you somewhere internationally to do a thing for your podcast. Like, I mean, that's
cool.
hard to pass up on.
Yeah. So what is your favorite fish?
What is my favorite fish? What is my favorite fish right now? I would like to say it'd be discus when they actually start breeding. I mean, that would be a nice one. I think as silly as it is, I think the super reds and the albinos, because their behavior. I've had some nights where it's late at night, my kids are sleeping, and I'm just sitting on the floor watching the bristlenose like do their silly posturing back and forth and just really goofy behavior. And everybody could use, every tank can have a bristlenose in it. Everybody could kind of use a bristlenose. Sure, they may eat some of your softer leaf plants and whatnot, but for the most part,
if you feed them, they shouldn't.
I think it's just a fun fish. So that's kind of right now like one of my favorites, but I don't know. I'm sure at some point it'll change. I mean, I just like I like the husbandry. I like the fish room aspect of it. I like the breeding. Yeah,
I'm with you. Plecos are right up there for me, and the ancestors pleco, the bristlenose for sure. Same reasons. Fairly easy to breed, and they're very hardy and can be colorful. But back to discus for a second here, because you did mention discus first. Would you say they're as difficult to keep as the myth is?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say because I utilize an auto water change system, so I kind of have that advantage working for me. But that being said, I still did struggle with, because it is just a bigger fish. You are feeding them more food. That I had to increase the amount of water going into those tanks for the daily water change. I had to also start running more stacked foam. I had to incorporate aqua clears on their tanks just to get more biological filtration. They were a fish in the fish room that I just couldn't water change my way through and be okay. So
you water change every day on them?
Oh yeah. The entire fish room, every tank gets roughly a 20% amount of water goes into each tank. Of course, it dilutes with the existing water, but there's water runs 7 days a week in my fish tank or my fish room for a water change.
And then how do you dechlorinate that?
So I run a carbon block with a sediment filter. So I have those two before they go into the system. But I've honestly found that I changed my main display tank. I changed my son's bedded tank. I could run straight tap water. The chlorine level is basically not even detected in our water that I have. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
But just to be on the safe side, I mean, when I built the water change system, it's like might as well have the carbon block there.
For sure. Yeah.
But I mean, I would say one of the challenges, and I'm still working through this, is the skittishness of the checkerboards. They are incredibly skittish, and I don't know if it's necessarily the positioning of the tank that they're in and the way the lighting is hit it. I've done a lot of different things, like people probably saw in the fish room video, of adding artificial plants, adding driftwood, reducing the amount of light, and trying to hood the lights of the tanks around it. So that's still a work in progress, because every time I go in that fish room, they all huddle. There's been some pretty epic like fish slamming into the lid, and no other fish that I've had in that particular tank has done that. So I certainly think that they can be, they can be touchy,
Do you think that like if you got some other checkerboards from someone else and put them in, they would have the same behavior?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to play around and just see, maybe try a couple different cichlid species in that particular tank. But I've seen plenty of videos and pictures online of people with their checkerboards that are just out and about. I got these checkerboards came from the same source as the red melons and the blue diamonds. and they are those guys. All the personality of a cichlid. They come out. They're not afraid whatsoever. Now, if you shove your hand in there, that might scare them, but otherwise, they see you and like, oh, food. Where these guys
Yeah.
are like, whoa, they think you're like an osprey or something. So,
Okay. Do you have any fish tattoos?
yes, I do actually have fish tattoos.
What
Oh,
do you have? Can you show them on camera?
I think so. It's so the one main sleeve on my arm is of a koi, which I
Yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
never don't own. So there's that koi, and then that's it. I mean, there may be some in the future, but again, that's like the international travel. That's like the wife's got to give me the blessing on that.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So what fish have you never kept that you'd like to?
Let's see here. Mm, I don't know about have never kept, but I would like to keep a flower horn again. So I had,
Okay.
I got when I lived in Sacramento, somebody had put up on Craigslist a free flower horn pair,
Yeah.
and so that was actually one of my first attempts of breeding was this male female flower horn I got from him, and he had said like he had never gotten them to breed, but they were very very mature, very large. And I really enjoy those fish. I really like the wet pet side of it, and I think that the flower horns like and this wrong side. This poster right here
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
flower horn poster. I mean, there's so many. There's such a beautiful, colorful fish, and then the camaraderie on the flower horn side of things with the folks from the UFA. Shout out to
Yeah.
Bert and I from UFA.
Yeah.
They're a great group of people. They're a great Facebook group. I hardly ever see any drama on that Facebook group at all. There's a thirsty dog back there.
That's two dogs drinking at once. I know.
Yeah, so I would say I would keep a flower horn again. I would get like a 120-gallon tank and have just a lone wet pet flower horn, and he would just be awesome. So
Terry Lindsay's just throwing out a tip there. He says some cichlids don't like to be housed near the floor. Keep them high. So
yeah, these discus are on the middle rack. So
okay.
yeah, but no, hey, any tips are appreciated. No worries.
Just pull in another. I just gotta go first name on this. Vafa. Sorry, I don't. I butchered that last name. What do you guys think about blood parrots? You can go first.
I am not the biggest fan, not for any like hybridization reasons, but they just aesthetically don't appease to me. I will say though that the parrot flower horn mixes now, and
Hmm.
that polar blue like convict
Yeah,
cichlidy
I see
blood
it. They
parrot,
look kind of cool. I saw
those
some in
ones,
person.
they're kind of cool. I would probably never keep one. The flower horn blood parrot looks really really cool, but just the generic blood parrots, I know in Asian cultures like those are really really popular.
Yeah.
Corey had some for a little bit, but they just don't do it for me. And again, the hobby is so multifaceted. Like to each their own. I that's my thought.
I've never really been into the blood parrots, but my son wanted some, so we got a few for our 220. Put them in there, and they've grown on me. I like them.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. Um, I think that is going to do. That is going to wrap us up for today. Randy, thank you so much. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed having you on. I got a chance to meet you in person at AGA last May, and we kind of talked about maybe you would come on, and we've finally got you here, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this unofficial, unsponsored, but if you haven't
Yes.
got your Easy Green, go get yourself some Easy Green. This is the stuff. And then you know what? I can't believe we still have these guys in stock. If you're an aquarium co-op fan, you haven't got your Murphy hat yet. This thing is amazing. How do you not have a Murphy hat yet? So I'm surprised we have them in stock. But hopefully after this, people will buy them and gobble them up. It's a great hat.
As far as the Easy Green products go, I use the root tabs. I use the Easy Green fertilizer, and for me, the fertilizer works the best. I use the least amount of fertilizer when I'm using Easy Green. That's why I don't use the other ones like Seachem anymore because the Easy Green just goes the farthest for me.
There you
So
go.
there it is. So thanks everybody. Randy, what's your next video coming out?
Interviews. So
Do you know when that's coming out?
what's the next thing coming out, or the next?
When can we look for something from you?
Oh, yeah. So I've got 2 interviews already recorded, and I think I'll do back-to-back weeks. So I think this Monday, one interview will drop, and then the following week another interview will drop, and then maybe I'll make a video, but I'm
Oh, that'd
terrible.
be good. Nice edited
I don't
video.
know.
Yeah, I have got just. I mean, down up in Canada here, we have a 4-day weekend coming up next weekend for Easter, so that's gonna give me some time to hopefully shoot some videos. So I have nothing planned until then, so that's
Nice.
pretty much it. Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Randy. So I can't really do my normal sign off, but I'm going to anyway because why not? So join me next week for another edition, Friday Fish Facts. Bye, everybody.